The wind screamed across the snow-swept plains like a wild animal, carrying with it a cold so bitter it seemed to freeze your very soul. In the middle of that frozen nightmare, a lone boy staggered, dragging two small, shivering bodies through the blinding white. The world had abandoned them. The storm was relentless, and death lingered close. But fate had another witness that day, a grizzled rancher whose life had been defined by survival, justice, and the stubborn refusal to let evil go unpunished. What happened next? Test the limits of human courage and ignite a chain of events no one could have imagined. It was the winter of 1893, a season so fierce the plains seemed to vanish under endless white. The wind cut like knives through every layer of clothing, howling across the open fields of Montana. In the distance, the skeletal outline of a small cabin wavered in the storm, barely visible through the snow. Inside that tiny wooden structure, a boy named Eli had made a decision that would haunt the rest of his life. He was taking his twin siblings, Anna and Sam, into the blizzard. No one knew why the boy had acted in such desperation. Rumors whispered of debts, threats, and secrets buried in shadows. But what mattered now was survival. Eli's small hands, numb and bleeding from the ice, gripped the twins' tiny arms as he pulled them across the frozen prairie. Their faces were blue, lips cracking, teeth chattering violently as each gust threatened to steal them away. Each step forward was a battle, every footfall a triumph over the storm. He stumbled, fell, but forced himself up, whispering frantic encouragement to Anna and Sam, who barely had the strength to blink through the snow. "Keep moving. We're almost there," he said, though even he wasn't sure where there really was. The sky was an endless grey void, and the world seemed determined to swallow them whole. Hours dragged on like centuries. Eli's boots were soaked through, his body shaking uncontrollably from the cold. He could feel himself fading, but he refused to let the twins go. In the distance, through a haze of snow, he saw movement, something that did not belong to the storm. A figure approached, tall and sturdy, moving with the steadiness of a man used to facing danger. It was Caleb Mercer, a rancher known for his unyielding grit and unwavering sense of justice. He had been out inspecting his land, checking on the fences and cattle, when the storm had nearly taken him as well. But the faint, desperate cries of a child pierced through the howling wind. Guiding him like a beacon, Caleb's eyes widened as he spotted Eli struggling with the twins. Without hesitation, he charged through the snow, every step a battle against the wind, and reached them just as Eli collapsed to his knees, completely exhausted. The twins were barely conscious, frozen and trembling. Caleb scooped them up with a strength born from years of survival and wrapped them tightly in his coat. "You're not going to die today," he shouted against the storm, his voice booming over the blizzard. Eli, on the other hand, could only stare, his face wet, with a mixture of snow, tears, and relief. The weight of what he had done pressed on him like a mountain. Once inside Caleb's warm cabin, the twins were placed by the fire, their tiny bodies slowly regaining color. Eli sat opposite them, drenched and shaking, staring at the flames with hollow eyes. Caleb watched him carefully, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Something had driven this boy to such extremes, something dangerous, something wrong, and Caleb knew in his bones that he could not let it slide. This was no mere accident or misfortune. There was a storm within the boy, just as violent as the one that raged outside. "You're lucky I found you," Caleb said, his tone calm but edged with steel. "And lucky your siblings are still alive. But luck won't protect you from the choices you've made." Eli flinched, suddenly aware that the weight of judgment was heavier than the weight of the snow outside. The boy's eyes darted to the floor, ashamed but defiant, as if daring anyone to look him fully in the face. Caleb sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "You need to rest. We'll talk in the morning. But know this, boy, I swear. If what you've done harms anyone else, I'll be there to stop you." Outside, the blizzard continued to rage, relentless and unforgiving. Inside, a tense quiet settled over the cabin, broken only by the soft crackling of the fire and the faint, uneven breaths of the twins. The events of the day had planted seeds of fear, guilt and determination in Caleb's heart. He could feel the storm in more ways than one. It was coming, not just outside, but within the life of the boy who had risked everything. And Caleb Mercer was a man who never backed down from a storm. As the firelight flickered across the walls, Eli lay down near the door, exhaustion pulling him into a restless sleep. But in the back of his mind, one thought persisted. He had survived the blizzard, but the real storm, Caleb Mercer's relentless pursuit of truth and justice, was only beginning. And for anyone watching the story unfold, they had better hold tight, because what comes next is a fight, a chase, and a revelation that will shake every belief about right, wrong in the limits of courage. The morning after the blizzard dawned gray and cold, a silent reminder that the storm had not yet ended, not outside, and certainly not inside the hearts of those involved. Caleb Mercer awoke before sunrise, the fire reduced to glowing embers, and stared into the shadows of his cabin. He had watched Eli through the night, the boy's restless sleep, a window into a mind burdened by guilt, fear, and something far darker, desperation that had driven him to risk the lives of his own siblings. The rancher had always believed in justice tempered with mercy, but something about Eli set his instincts on high alert. There were answers to uncover, and Caleb Mercer was not a man who ignored unanswered questions. Eli woke to the smell of coffee and the warmth of the fire, but the fear in his chest was heavier than any blanket. Anna and Sam were awake, timidly eating some bread Caleb had brought them, their faces still pink from the cold. Eli's guilt pressed down on him like a weight he could not shake. He wanted to say something to them to apologize, but the words stuck in his throat. Caleb entered the cabin, boots crunching on the wooden floor, his eyes sharp and unwavering. "You've got some explaining to do, boy," he said quietly but firmly. "Start from the beginning. Why did you drag them through that storm?" Eli hesitated, glancing at his siblings, who looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. His throat tightened. He could lie and maybe escape judgment, but Caleb's presence was like iron, unforgiving. Finally he whispered, voice trembling, They were in danger. I had no choice." Caleb raised an eyebrow. But he had learned long ago that desperation could lead people to extremes. Still, the rancher's instincts told him there was more, a shadow behind the boy's actions, a hidden hand that had set the events in motion. Caleb pressed further, his tone colder, sharper. "Who's threatening them? Who made you do this?" Eli swallowed hard. The snowstorm outside had been merciless, but nothing compared to the fear that gripped him now. He told Caleb about the men in town, merciless, greedy, and dangerous, who had come after their family's small inheritance, who had driven him to flee into the blizzard with Anna and Sam. Each word Eli spoke revealed a deeper, darker world, a world the twins could barely understand, but that Caleb recognized instantly. The law could not protect them here. Only courage, strategy, and raw determination could. By midday, Caleb had packed supplies, blankets, food, water, and his rifle, and led Eli and the twins toward the nearest town. The wind was still vicious, but the journey was filled with a tense urgency, each step a calculation against the cold and potential threats. As they trudged through the snow, Caleb taught Eli small survival techniques, how to read the wind, how to find shelter, how to ration, strength. But behind these lessons was a more important truth. Trust and accountability were survival tools, just as crucial as fire or food. The trek revealed more than the harshness of nature. Caleb's sharp eyes caught footprints, strange, human, deliberate, tracking them through the snow. Eli's heart sank. He had not imagined the men would follow so closely, but Caleb's voice broke through his panic. "They think you're alone. They think you can't fight back. They're wrong." In that moment, Eli realized that the grizzled rancher was more than a protector. He was a weapon of determination, someone who would stop at nothing to ensure justice. As night fell, they reached a hidden cabin Caleb knew well deep in the hills. It was small, unremarkable, but secure. Perfect for planning. Like, share, and subscribe our YouTube channel, Cowboy Legends Story. And anyone question, and I'm answering the next video. Okay, viewers,